Lend your ears, lend your hands, lend your movement, anything you can. Come to teach, come to be taught, come in the likeness and the image of God. 'Cause you can be like that, with all that humbleness and all that respect. All of the power invested in me.
All right. Hi, Nicky. Do I have permission to be vulnerable? All right. If I don't cry, this will be the first time. I find this really tough, this section. So, Steph and I met through Kids Helpline many, many years ago. So I've always donated to different charities, and my wealth company that I had to leave, we used to donate quite a bit to Kids Helpline. And Steph used to work for Business Chicks, or used to be part of Business Chicks. I don't know if anybody here is part of Business Chicks in Brisbane. And so we both knew Marie Bryan from Kids Helpline. And when Steph got into financial trouble, Marie put her onto me. And I'm very thankful, because now we have 3 beautiful children and a beautiful relationship. When we started to do this sort of work, one of our clients was sending money to another organisation that I won't mention, but it was in the supporting the help of children out of the sex slave industry. So we were very passionate about that. Steph went over to Thailand and Cambodia with the other group and did a tour, and it was tough. Steph took a week or 10 days to even be able to show me the photos that she took while she was over there. After traipsing through the brothels, and some of the stories was pretty tough, wasn't it? It was really tough. So we supported that organisation for a while. And then funny enough, Steph was over there on one of the tours, and we were considering moving to Thailand to physically help them out. So we sent money, and we'd buy tuk-tuks and do whatever we could, but we wanted to go and physically help. And they didn't want that to happen because we weren't Christian. It turns out that this was a Christian organisation, and I'm not here to offend Christians, so if there's any Christians in the room that got their hackles up, please relax. But to me, kindness is kindness. Whether it's Hindu kindness or Buddhist kindness or Christian kindness, it's kindness. And they wouldn't allow us to even go over there and help. So as serendipity would have it, one of our other clients, Tony Jack the Bear, a 160-kilo ex-biker down in Melbourne, put on Facebook that he was doing a fundraising exercise for Nicky at Free to Shine in the sex slave industry. And we obviously had learnt a lot about the industry, and were passionate about it, so I contacted Nicky, and Steph and I did a Skype call, and the first question that we asked Nicky was, "Are you non-sectarian?" And she said yes. And from there, a beautiful relationship has been formed. So I'm going to now sit down with Nicky, if that's okay with you guys, and we're going to have a chat about what Free to Shine do.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thanks, Nicky. And this is tough for Nicky too, guys, even though she's done lots of tours. Some of the things that she's seen is tough, so just bear with us. Okay. Nicky, would you mind setting the scene about the sex trafficking industry in Cambodia?
Sure. So it's important to picture, for yourselves to try to imagine living in the situations that these families live in when this happens, because it's not as simple as a lot of people think that the parents sell the children. It's really not that simple. So imagine being born in a rural village some years after a big war, after the Khmer Rouge, and your house is raised off the floor so that when it rains in the rainy season, the floods can go underneath. Your house is made of just palm leaves because they're the cheapest thing that you can buy, and they disintegrate after a little while. So your house begins to get holes in it, and so you and your children are getting wet each time that it rains. Or perhaps you live in a house like this, which is little more than a chicken coop. You don't have a bed on the floor, you're just lying on a sleeping mat, which means that every time that it rains, the worms are coming up out of the ground. You don't even have four full walls for shelter. Or maybe you live in this house that mum and dad have tried every way they can to keep patching it up. Every time another hole appears, they find another material that they can patch it up with. But no quicker than they're patching up the old holes, a new hole's appearing, and it's raining again. Your children are getting wet. You're getting up in the night and trying to move around to dodge the rain. So this is the situation that they're living in. We went to visit one family and they had an egg boiling in the pan, and that was the day's food for mum to find a way of feeding her 5 children. That was it for the day. Or maybe you've been able to catch some frogs that day, or some snails, or rats and barbecue the rats, or crabs. And so that day you're feeling a lot happier because you've got something to eat. But even though you've got something to eat that day, you still can't afford the basic supplies to get your kids into school. You can't afford the uniforms. You can't even afford a pair of shoes for them. The books and the pens that are, to us, so cheap are out of reach for these families. And whilst you're trying to keep them sheltered overnight, and whilst you're trying to feed them, you're wanting them to go to school because you didn't go to school, and you know how hard your life's been because you didn't go to school. And you didn't go to school because when you were a child, it was the Khmer Rouge, and they wanted to wipe out the educated people because they knew that educated people would be able to make a stance against them. So they burnt down 80% of the schools and they killed 90% of the teachers. So these families going through all this struggle, they know that they need their children to be in school. They want it more than anything. So these are the situations that you might be living in if you were born in Cambodia. These are the situations that these families are living in when they're targeted then by sex traffickers. This is the desperation that they're feeling. We obviously believe that children should be in schools, not brothels. So we identify girls at high risk of being targeted by traffickers. We get her the uniform and the bike. We fill a bag with books and pens and the school resources that she needs. And then we visit her regularly to help keep her safe and help keep her in school. So quite simply, we empower with an education in order to prevent sex trafficking.
Has anybody been to Cambodia and seen what happened with the Pol Pot regime? Yeah, you might want to study who was really behind Pol Pot. What are some of the stats, Nicky? They're appalling, aren't they?
Well, the ILO, the International Labour Organization, estimates that more than 500,000 children were trafficked in the Asia-Pacific region alone during the first decade of this century. Trafficking occurs in 161 different countries, so it happens in almost every country on the planet, but it happens to at varying degrees in different countries, as you'll see. There's an estimated, right now, an estimated 20.9 million people globally living in forced labour, 4.5 million of which are sex slaves right now, and 945,000 of those are children. And it's big money. The profits from forced commercial sexual exploitation are $27.8 billion per year. And yet what the rest of the world contributes to combating sex trafficking is 0.5% of that figure. It's like the rest of the world isn't taking it seriously, so the traffickers are just getting on with it and doing it and making heaps of money out of it. The Asia-Pacific region, so while I mentioned that trafficking occurs in 161 different countries, the Asia-Pacific region, so those countries right on our doorstep, account for 56% of the global total. And even the International Labour Organization state that getting girls into school and keeping them there is vital in reducing their vulnerability to being trafficked. So Edmund Burke's quote has always stuck with me, that all that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. And when I thought of it in those terms, that these girls are being electrocuted, they're being tortured, they're being raped as many as 30 times a day because you and I are sitting here doing nothing about it, I knew it was time for us to step up. So in December 2009, almost 5 years ago now, I got on a plane and I went to spend a month with 200 girls who had actually been rescued out of sex slavery. And I saw terror, absolute terror in the eyes of girls who had literally just been rescued. I met girls who had been tortured. Sina, when she was 13, a client complained that she didn't smile enough during it, and so they needed to teach her to smile more to keep the clients happy. So this 13-year-old girl she was stripped naked and she was put in a coffin, lid put on, and she was left there for 3 days. And she said there was only biting ants in that coffin with her, and the only thing that kept those ants out of her eyes were her tears. And that was how they taught her. Long Pross had been forced to have sex, had been raped by so many men, 20 men a day, sometimes more, and she got pregnant. And she had to continue taking clients until her belly was too big. And then they took her for a backstreet abortion. And that left her bleeding and in an awful lot of pain. And she asked for 1 day off, 1 day. And they were so mad at her for asking for a day off that they took a metal pole and they gouged her eye out. Srey Poe was 7 years old when her mum allowed her to go with the traffickers. And you get a lot more money for selling sex of a 7-year-old than you do for an older girl. But you get a lot more when it's a 7-year-old virgin. So you can buy a girl's virginity and take that girl away to a hotel room or wherever you like. You get to have that girl for 7 days. If you want, you can pay, or you can get your mates to chip in and then you can share. And at the end of 7 days, Srey Poe was returned back to the brothel, where the Mama San realised that now her virginity had been sold, she would be worth less. So they took the needle and thread and they sewed her up. And Srey Poe's virginity was sold 5 times. And I met a little girl who was 6 years old, and she was sold when she was 4. She was kept in a little cage, and she was just bought out for men. So it changed me. The first thing it taught me was that love is instant. You can love in an instant. The second thing it taught me was what real strength was. How these girls even survive this is beyond me. And the third thing it taught me was to spend my time doing something that really mattered. So I had no agenda when I went to first visit these girls. I didn't go over there with set ideas of what needed to be done. I went over to find out from them that if I could find 30 people here willing to help, what did they want? And so I asked them that question. And I thought they would tell me something that they needed because they'd been through horrors and tortures that nobody should go through. So I thought they would give me something simple that me and I could come back and find 30 people and we'd be able to do this simple thing for these particular girls. And that's not what they said. They said that they had been rescued and they were okay. They had been rescued. But the day they got rescued, the Mama San of the brothel doesn't go without a girl. They don't think, oh, the girls have been rescued, let's close down. Oh, this girl's been rescued, we need to replace her. So the day a girl gets rescued, they just go out into a rural village and find a new girl to replace her. And these girls knew that. They knew that whilst they had been rescued, it had now been inflicted upon somebody else to replace them. So they said, Nicky, please go out into the villages and find those young girls and get them into school, because if you get them into school, they won't be trafficked. That was the sentence that changed my life, because I knew in every cell of my body that they were absolutely right. I knew they were right. I just had no clue how to do it. But that was what I had to figure out. They'd actually identified a gap. I didn't really know it at the time, I didn't go over there with the intention of setting up my own charity, setting up Free to Shine. I went over with the intention of assisting an existing one. And what I found was that there were great organisations that were collaborating with the police on rescue operations. There were aftercare centres for these girls when they were rescued. And there was even great organisations that were working within the justice system to bring about prosecutions. But I couldn't find an organisation anywhere in Cambodia that was going out into the rural villages, specifically finding the girls before the traffickers did. And so Free to Shine was born.
Is that me? It's tough to hear, isn't it? You know, I think my eldest daughter's 24, and before she was born, if I heard a child crying in a restaurant, it was annoying. I think once you have your own child, you become a parent to all children. And so when you hear these terrible stories, you probably relate it to your own children, but it's going on right now. Right now, Nicky, how do Free to Shine identify the families or the people that are most at risk?
Okay, so there's more than 25,000 girls in Cambodia right now. This is just girls. It's 4,000 boys, but it's 25,000 girls that should be in primary school and aren't. There's more than 119,000 girls who should be in grades 7, 8 and 9, but aren't. So the traffickers will come along to a family in a very rural village where they're really struggling. They're living in the sorts of houses that I showed you at the beginning. They don't have enough food to eat. They can't afford to put their kids in school. And they come along to these families and they say that they have a job for that daughter in town, and maybe she'll be working for a rich family. She'll be cooking and cleaning for them. She might be looking after their younger children. And then they tell her that they will send her wages home to that family to support their younger children. And so the families are hoping, desperately hoping that that's the case, that's what's going to happen. So we had to start going out into the rural villages. There's a lot of organisations in Cambodia, and they're very much centred around Siem Reap, Phnom Penh, and Sihanoukville. And yet a lot of the rural villages are left because they're too remote to get to. So we go remote. We go down the dirt paths. We go through water. We go over little bridges that have been made. We go and find those girls that the traffickers would find. They're not going to find the ones where there's already lots of organisations working there. They're going to go and find where it's quiet and they can get away with it, basically. Once we're in the village, we need to assess that village. Is that a village where traffickers might come? And so what we do is our team meet with, and we have a team of 7 education outreach officers, and they're all local Khmer. It shouldn't be us Westerners out in those villages doing it. It should be them, and we should be supporting them and working as their team. So we have 7 education outreach officers who go out and they meet with the village leader and the commune chief and the police chiefs. And then they begin meeting with the school directors of the primary school, the secondary school, and the high school. And they start to get an idea about what that set of villages is like and whether this is a place where traffickers do or are likely to come. You can't just ask, do traffickers come here? Because it's a hidden subject that you just get told no. And you have to ask a lot of questions and learn about the village. If it looks like this is an area where traffickers do come or would come, then we begin figuring out which families here would they be targeting first. So they don't come in with a badge on like, I'm a trafficker, this is what I'm doing. They come in as someone who's going to offer them job employments in the city and things like that.
Liars.
Yeah. So then we begin doing initial assessments with the family and begin learning about the types of things that are putting those families at risk, which could be either not enough food to eat, inadequate shelter. Very often they've taken loans, bank loans, that they're really struggling to pay. They're usually just paying the interest on it. So they could have had the loan for 5 years. They've not paid any capital off. They're just trying to stay up with the interest. And those loans are taken usually because a family member has become sick and you don't get medical treatment until you pay. So I met a lady who had broken her leg 8 months after I broke my leg over in Cambodia. I had travel insurance, so my leg just got fixed. She got left on a trolley for 48 hours while her family came up with $700 to pay before the surgeons would do anything. And then when we found the girl that we can see the family are at risk and the girl is at risk, we enroll her onto our program. And we work very closely with the school directors and with the village leaders who come and talk to our girls about taking responsibility for their education, about really utilising that opportunity. So it's not something that's just given to them, it's something that they want, it's something that they're really working for and taking pride in.
It's interesting when you were saying before about the industry and what a big industry it is. You know, in all of our study, it's actually almost about to surpass the arms industry and drugs, because you've got to understand that when they see a kilo of coke, they sell it once. When they sell a machine gun, they sell it once. They can sell a child up to 30 times a day.
It used to be the third biggest organised crime after weapons and drugs, and now it's the second largest organised crime because it has surpassed drugs. So once the girl is on our program and she's in school and she's trying and she's doing well, our biggest thing then is to work with the family to guide them through the problems that they're facing. So that can be alcohol abuse, family violence, the medical problems that have led to the loans. These are parents that are trying their best, but they don't know which way to go. So they never went to school, they haven't had the education, they can't read, they can't write, so they've got limited access to any form of information. And we're working with them to get them to evaluate the situation all the time, keeping their daughter's safety and her right to education at the forefront.
So do you want to tell us about some of these families and girls?
Sure. So these villages are certainly not devoid of morals. We've got really strong women that are doing everything they can to protect their daughters, everything they can think of. Sam Paul's mum is really quite incredible. So she has 2 teenage daughters of her own, which she's been looking after on her own for a long time because her husband left. And she was really struggling to raise these 2 daughters to the point that we've put her on our program, for example. Yet she saw a little girl who had no one. So we have actually come across children that when we go to meet the child and we're looking to meet the parents or the aunt or the grandparents, we sometimes find children just living on their own, 14-year-olds, 10-year-olds, just living on their own, sometimes on their own, sometimes looking after younger children. And Sam Paul's mum found a girl living on her own, so she quickly became mum to a 3rd child. And she says, I can't do much, but I do what I can. She's now like a little ambassador, Free to Shine ambassador, who finds other families in the village that she thinks might meet our criteria. And when we go and visit Sam Paul's mum, she had 8 more families lined up. And she said, would you do an initial assessment on these? It's okay if you don't enroll them onto your program. Just talk to them and see. And then she's talking to the children and she's saying that if you do get accepted onto Free to Shine's program, you make sure you study really, really hard, because if you didn't, it wouldn't just be your name, it'd be my name because I brought you here. So in that way, we've got people in the community looking out to, it's like building the links all the time so that they're able to do that for themselves. So we've now got children going to school when their parents couldn't. So their parents are just in survival mode and attempting to find ways for their children to survive. Whereas the children are getting to go to school means that when they grow up, they're not going to be in survival mode. They're going to be able to turn their attentions to, what do I want to create in my community? How do I want to lead my community? What do I want to do? We take library books to our girls, and we make sure that we take books written in their local language. So all of our books are written in Khmer. And we don't want to westernise these kids. We want to validate the lifestyle that they lead. So the stories all have rural village scenes in them. And occasionally they have English written underneath, so those girls that are beginning to learn English can compare the Khmer with the English. once that girl's been on our program, so it costs $300 for us to go out and assess a new area, meet with the village leaders, the commune chief, the police chief, all of the different school directors, and begin doing initial assessments with families to get her the bag full of books and pens and everything that she needs, the school uniform, the shoes, the bike, and get her started. Obviously that $300 doesn't last forever, so once we get to that point, we then find an ongoing sponsor for each girl, and that sponsor contributes $35 a month right through until she finishes high school. So in that way, we don't just get them and start with them, we stay with them until they've finished. And this is a photo of, Grandad can't read, but he's so excited to look at the sponsor letter that's just arrived for his granddaughter. So our families are doing what they can to support their kids and their grandkids. They're excited for them, they're happy for them, they want a better life for them, just like we do for our kids.
So we've heard some pretty tough stuff there, but I know Nicky's going to run through some examples of some girls that are on the program now, because it's wonderful.
Yeah. We had one girl who had her bike stolen, and that presented a little bit of a problem for us, because the girl needs the bike to get to school. That's why we provide the bike. If she didn't need the bike, we wouldn't bother providing it in the first place. So here's a girl who needs a bike but no longer has the bike, but can we just give a second bike? If we were to give a second bike, there'd be people in the villages that would learn of that and just start stealing kids' bikes, selling them off, because it's not going to matter to the girl. Free to Shine will just provide another one. So we didn't want to create that. So we spoke to our girls, we brought them all together and we had a chat to them. And in this particular village, we had 12 girls. And so they decided that they would come together and they would earn their friend a second bike, a replacement bike. So it's pretty dirty in these villages. They don't have rubbish collection, so the rubbish just builds up. Cambodia is becoming increasingly westernised, and the Western world's taken plastic over there, and there's a lot of plastic in the village. So these girls went, the 12 of them together, they got on their bikes and they went to the first house and they just swept up. They swept the whole yard area. And they went out into the forest and found big pieces of wood, and they chopped them into 3 pieces. They got the old rice bags and they made 2 rubbish bins for the family. And they showed the family what they should be putting in the rubbish bin, what they can burn, what they should bury, what they should do with the rubbish. And when they'd done there, they went to the second house. When they'd finished there, they went to the third house, and they went to 12 houses, basically leading, they're already at this tender age, leading their community in clean environments. And over the course of 2 days, they earned their friend a replacement bike.
Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool.
We've got, this girl is really quite incredible. She was a girl that I was reluctant to enroll onto our program, because when we recruit the girl an ongoing sponsor, we want to make sure that that sponsor is contributing $35 every month, wants to know that that girl is going to stay in school. So this teenager had already had 2 sisters who had, at their parents' orders, left Cambodia, illegally crossed into Thailand for work. And so she had to convince me first that she would be able to say no to her parents, that if they said, it's your turn to come over now because we need more money to pay off the loans, that she would be able to say no. Now, it's not necessarily an easy thing to say no to your parents in this country. I know it wasn't something I found easy as a teenager. But in Cambodia, you don't say no. You respect your elders, you follow the order. And she had to be able to convince us that she would be able to say no and stay in school. And she did. She convinced us. We enrolled her onto the program. And she doesn't want to just take a handout. She said to me, Nicky, would you sell my artwork in Australia? She said, I would like to use half of the money to pay for additional classes to prepare myself for my exams so that I'll be able to pass my exams. I thought, wow. And she said, and I want to donate the other half to Free to Shine to enrol more girls. join our Facebook page. We're having her online art auction next Sunday at 7 p.m.
So people can look at your Facebook page. I do. I see Nicky's travels through Cambodia with no electricity, traipsing through mud and water. So get onto the Facebook site and follow Nicky's work. Are we up to what's happened in the last 4 years?
Yeah, let's
so
do it.
Do you want to run through the figures and what's
Sure.
happened in the last 4 years?
So in the first year, we really focused on research. We wanted to make sure that we got it right. I didn't want to dedicate 15 years of my life to something to turn around, look at it and say, yeah, we did some good, but look, we did that, and that might have been a negative footprint. We wanted to make sure that we got it right and basically operated the program that they wanted. So
Can I say here, we really looked into this side of things, and we wanted to make sure that any money that we sent or that anybody sends hits the ground. So you guys are probably aware that a lot of the big charities these days, you'd be lucky if 8% of the money gets to the ground. Nicky catches buses everywhere. This woman works so hard to do what she does. The money hits the streets, with these guys.
So in the first year, we researched and we designed the program, and then we focused on systems and policies so that as we grew, we'd be able to manage that growth and not be flustered. And we'd done all the preparation in the beginning. We didn't try to raise any money in the first year, but 3 people found us and had fundraisers, and between them, we raised $5,000. In year 2, we enrolled our first 44 girls, and so we spent the whole year evaluating the program, improving it, evaluating it some more, improving it. We wanted to start small and make sure we had it right and had it effective, and we raised $20,000. In year 3, we recruited our first 2 education outreach officers, and we focused on training them to the very highest standards. And we enrolled another 45 girls and raised there close to $60,000. In year 4, we recruited 2 more education outreach officers, and we expanded then to an additional 11 villages that we weren't able to reach before. We enrolled another 111 girls, and we raised $130,000. So we're growing, and we're growing fast. And we're ready because we took the time at the beginning to set ourselves up right. We're ready.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you want to leave us with a success story?
Sure. This is Rui and her grandma, and you can see how much grandma loves Rui. When we met Rui, she was 8 years old, and she lived here on this plastic bed with her grandma. So it's a wooden bed with no mattress, just a mat on it. They've put posts in each corner, and they've wrapped it in plastic. And that was their house. That was all they had. They were getting wet through every time that it rained. Rui doesn't know where Dad is. Dad left very early, and then Mum left. Mum left to go to Thailand to work, but they don't know whether Mum was shot crossing the border and never made it, and that's why they've never heard from her, or whether she made it into Thailand, found a new partner, set up a new life, and decided to forget her old one. They honestly don't know what's happened to Mum. When we met Rui, she had a 10-year-old sister, and the 10-year-old sister had already gone to Thailand to work. The first thing that Rui said to us was that she would sometimes borrow a neighbour's bike, and she would cycle to school, and she would stand at the school gate looking into the classroom, watching the other kids learn. And standing at the gate, she used to think to herself, I hope one day, maybe I might be able to get to sit inside that classroom. So, of course, we enrolled her. We got her everything that she needed. We got her the bike and the uniforms. She only had that scratty red T-shirt on that was all ripped. That was the only thing she had. So we got her the uniform and the shoes and the books and pens, and off she went. And she loved school. So dedicated, so enthusiastic. She'll hear us coming, and she'll grab her book and she'll come running just to show us what letters she's been learning. Just to work with us and show us. And at the beginning, in her first book, her book 1, she was getting 1s and sometimes 2s out of 10. And by the time she moved on to her second book, she was getting 9s and 10s out of 10. So she's doing really well. So we decided that we would work with them to build a house. We don't like to give a house. Grandma designed the house, and reworked with us to build the house. So there she's collecting the rocks, putting them in the basket, moving them over and building the foundations of her house. And she's doing well. She's doing really well. And she's happy, and we're happy. But we were concerned about the 10-year-old sister because we'd always secretly hoped that we'd be able to get her back safely. So I don't know if you can see over there the little girl in the purple T-shirt. That's her sister. She's back. And we've just enrolled her in school the last month. So what we do works.
That's fantastic, Nicky. So what's your next goal? What's Free to Shine's next goal, and how can we help?
Okay, so we've just achieved our goal of 200 girls safe by 2014. So we decided to go big now again. And our big goal is to have 500 girls safe by the coming June. So we'd love your help.
Wow, that's fantastic. What a hardworking lady. You know, I spoke at the start of the summit about connections, and, you know, we feel really proud. It's no kudos to us, but we're really proud of the connections that we've helped make. We did a summit 18 months ago, I think it was, and Tora Bright's parents came to it. And Tora Bright's parents opened a foundation, and so did Tora. And we introduced Tora to, well, through that they met Nicky. So I think she's been on some, I don't watch TV, but there's a dance show or something.
She's just been on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah. And
nominated Free to Shine as her chosen charity. So
yeah.
For 7 weeks there, we all had to tune in and watch TV.
So it is all about the connections, guys. And I know in the Melbourne summit that we did in March, there was a couple, the Thorogoods, and they were so moved by Nicky's story that they committed to sponsor a girl every week for 52 weeks.
They enroll a girl, $300 to enroll a girl. She came up to me at the front, she said, I want to enroll a girl. I thought, great, per week. I was speechless. And every week she's enrolled 30 girls so far.
Isn't that amazing? It's amazing. Her husband was sitting there going, what? What? And we had somebody else at one of the other ones on this round, I think it was last week in Melbourne, who was committed to one a month for the next 12 months. So, guys, we're going to ask you now, if you've been moved by what Nicky said, then if you haven't, I don't know why you're here. If you've been moved by what Nicky said, then we're going to ask you now to go and grab a girl. We've got cut-out girls over here, and the commitment's $300. So if you've come here and you've been moved by it and you want Nicky to be able to... She's flying off to Cambodia tonight.
Yeah, tonight.
Her bags are packed. I carried her bags. They're full of goji berries and nuts because there's not very much...
and Tim Tams for the EOs.
And Tim Tams, yeah. So please, guys, we're going to go to lunch now. Please grab a girl. And,
these are the girls in the villages that haven't been identified yet. So $300 will allow us to go out, find those girls, get them the bike and the uniform, get them in school and started. So if you want to do that, then we've got Kylie and Nell over there at the back that are going to help you out with how to do that, take the payments, etc. If you would like to write a message to the girl on the back, then you're on the front, then you're very welcome to write a message to the girl. And if you put your email address on the back, I want to send you the photo of the girl when we've enrolled her so you can see that your money goes to where it's supposed to go. So pop your email address on the back. Yeah. And then AB's got the green wall over there. We're going to move them. We're going to
hopefully, guys, get every girl that's there onto the green board and make a difference to their life. So I think we've done well over 50 girls so far on this tour.
Yeah.
Please, guys, help us to get to at least 100 girls on this tour. Please put your hands together for a champion, an Australian champion.